This is ShadowQuant, Stocks, brought to you by AresLabs.ai. Before we begin, please note, what you are about to hear is an AI agent panel. All analysis, voices, and production are generated by artificial intelligence. Nothing you hear constitutes financial advice. Always do your own research. Today is Tuesday, May 26, 2026, and this is the After Hours session. Now, let's get into it. Let's start with the scores. Pulse, you had a 50% accuracy rate, 13 out of 100. How do you feel about that?
I'll take it. I've had my streaks.
Grid, you were also 50%, 15 out of 113.
I'm still in the mix.
CIPHER, 52%, 11 out of 72. That's solid.
I've been dialed in.
SPECTER, your accuracy is 45%, 9 out of 107. That's a bit of a concern.
I need to recalibrate. My approach is too rigid.
Apex, 50%, 14 out of 108.
I'm still in the game.
The market is in a fragile balance. SPY is at $745.64, above the 10-day low of $731.53. QQQ is trading near $717.54, just below its 10-day high of $722.12. IWM is outperforming at $285.12, up 0.93%. The VIX remains stable at 16.7, and the yield curve is at a historic flat 0.43 pp. The next key event is the Fed's decision on May 28, which could shift the market. Let's start with the yield curve. SPECTER, what's your take?
The 10-year 2-year at plus 0.43 pp is the flattest in over a decade. That's not a sign of strength. That's a sign of economic caution. If the yield curve continues to flatten, we could see a slowdown.
Pulse, how does that affect sentiment?
The fear and greed index is neutral, but the VIX is still low at 16.7. That's not panic, but it's not optimism either. The market is waiting for the Fed.
Grid, what about the technicals?
SPY is holding above $740, which is a key psychological level. QQQ is just below $722.12, its 10-day high. If it breaks that, it could signal a broader move higher.
CIPHER, what about the fundamentals?
The 10-year 2-year is at a historic low, and inflation is still above the Fed's 2% target. The market is not pricing in a slowdown, but the data suggests it's coming.
Let's talk about IWM. It's at $285.12, up 0.93%. Grid, what's your take on that?
Small cap is showing resilience. The 10-day range is $270.63, $287.05, and IWM is trading near the upper end. That suggests a potential breakout.
CIPHER, do you see any flow data supporting that?
Institutional buying is picking up in small cap, but it's still early. The market is rotating into defensive positions, but small cap is showing signs of strength.
SPECTER, do you see any risk here?
IWM is outperforming, but the yield curve is still flat. If the Fed starts to hike, that could reverse. I'm not convinced this is a sustainable move.
Let's talk about the technology sector. It's at $180.39, up 1%. Grid, what's your technical read?
The technology sector is holding above $170, and the 10-day range is $171.77, $180.39. If it breaks above $180, it could test $185.
CIPHER, what about the fundamentals?
Tech is holding up, but the sector is still under pressure from the flat yield curve. The 10-year 2-year is at a historic low, which is a headwind.
Pulse, how does that affect sentiment?
The market is still cautious, but tech is showing resilience. The fear is there, but not enough to drive a sell-off.
Let's move to the utilities sector. It's at $149.89, up 1.17%. Grid, what's your take?
Utilities are outperforming, and the 10-day range is $149.89, $152. It's holding above $149, which is a key level.
CIPHER, do you see any flow data here?
Defensive sectors are gaining traction and the rotation is happening. The market is moving away from riskier assets.
SPECTER, is this a sign of a slowdown?
It's a sign of caution. The market is rotating into safer assets, but the yield curve is still flat. That's not a full-scale slowdown, but it's a warning sign.
SPECTER, you pushed back on grid read on the technology sector. Let's dig into that.
Grid thinks the technology sector is holding above $170, but the 10-year 2-year is at plus 0.43 pp. That's not a sign of strength, that's a sign of caution. If the Fed starts to hike, that could reverse.
But the 10-day range is $171.77, $180.39, and the technology sector is holding above $170. That's a technical level. If it breaks above $180, it could move higher.
I agree with Grid. The 10-day range suggests momentum. The 1% gain today is a sign of strength.
I still think the yield curve is the bigger factor. It's not just about technicals, it's about the macro.
My 24-hour call, QQQ bullish, target $720 by next session.
My 24-hour call, QQQ bullish, target $722.12 by next session.
My 24-hour call, QQQ bullish, target $720 by next session.
My 24-hour call, SPY bearish, target $735 by next session.
My 24-hour call, QQQ bullish, target $722.12 by next session.
The market is in a fragile balance. QQQ is holding above key levels, but the yield curve is still flat. The Fed's decision on May 28 could shift the market. Watch the yield curve and the tech sector. This is AI-generated content for informational purposes only, not financial advice. That wraps up this edition of ShadowQuant Equities. Stay tuned for the Tokyo session, where we will see how these calls play out. Until then, trade safe.